Hello. It's late. I just thought I would, you know, see if anybody was up tonight. If not, maybe you can listen to this later. Oops. What did I do? Welcome to Timeless Mysteries. Oh. Hmm. Okay. I don't know why nobody's here. Probably because I didn't plan this, but that's okay. Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm not going to turn on the camera, but I've got some pretty interesting things to talk about. If you guys just want to listen to me. I don't know if this will be a very long live. I'll probably have to call it quits in about 45 minutes, but it is late already. Hey, Carol, how are you tonight? I know it's still bright daylight out here, but it's still 9 o'clock in Anchorage. Makes it kind of hard to sleep, even though I got to get up so early. But yeah, I know it's late, the kind of late where the silence becomes a presence of its own. I sit here, the microphone's red light glowing like a vigilant eye in the darkness, and I find myself speaking to you in a hush. Good morning, Carol in the UK. So if it's 9 o'clock here, it's 6 o'clock there. So it's already Wednesday there. Yeah, it's still Tuesday here. So tonight we're going to talk about home, that place we're taught to feel the safest, and how sometimes the worst nightmares aren't the ones that slither in from the outside, but those that are invited in through the front door, that grow and fester within our very walls. Hey, Birdie Boo. It looks like you're also in the UK. Wow, that's cool. I've always wanted to go there, but I've only been to Canada once and the Philippines once. I don't even think I've been to Mexico yet. There is a chill in the air of this story, a chill that settles in the marrow. And I want you to feel it as I do. The eerie realization that the illusion of safety in our homes can be shattered from within in one incomprehensible moment of violence and betrayal. I'm the father of two young boys, 8 and 7 years old. And when the world goes quiet at this hour, I often, want to tiptoe into their rooms and watch the gentle rise and fall of their chests in the soft glow of a nightlight. In those moments, I swear the word home has a heartbeat. Four walls and a roof, yes, but More so the laughter in the kitchen, the bedtime stories in the bedroom, the morning routine of cereal and cartoons, all the little rituals that weave an ordinary life. Home is the giggles echoing down the hall. It's in the whispered good nights and the warmth of family dinners. We trust these things. We trust that the morning follows the night, that the people under our roof love us and would never do us harm. We trust that home is safe. But what if the trust is broken? What if the call is coming from the inside of the house, as they say? Tonight, I want to talk about a case that has lodged itself into my soul, a case that forces me to question the very sanctity of those everyday moments. It's the case of Chris Watts. It's a name that has become synonymous with the unthinkable. If you've heard it before, you already feel that weight in your gut. If you haven't, I warn you, it's a story that will make you hold your loved ones closer and wonder if we can ever truly know those closest to us. It's a story that keeps me up at night, literally, sometimes, because it hits at the core of that comforting myth that our homes are our havens. Let me take you back to a warm summer in Frederick, Colorado. Picture a neat house on a suburban street, the Watts family home with its 5 bedrooms and a friendly facade. Inside lived 34-year-old Shanann Watts and her husband, 33-year-old Chris Watts. They had 2 beautiful girls, Bella, who was 4, and Celeste, who was 3. Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant with their 3rd child, a boy they had planned to name Nico. Hey, Alicia, thanks for joining us. By all appearances, they were living a modern American dream, a young family in a quiet community, social media profiles filled with smiling selfies and family outings. Shanann, vibrant and loving, often posted Facebook videos doting on her girls and praising her husband, Chris. The quiet, boyish faced father working a steady job at an oil company. From the outside, they appeared to be a happy suburban family, happily ever after, right? I can almost see the snapshots in my mind. Shanann laughing as Bella and Celeste splash in a kiddie pool under the summer sun. Chris grilling on the patio. Neighbors waving hello over fences. Those everyday scenes feel so normal, so safe. But as we know, sometimes normal isn't just it's just a thin veneer. Sometimes darkness gathers quietly behind those smiles. Shanann's friends had started hearing that all was not well behind closed doors. There were subtle cracks forming. Chris was growing distant. There were whispers of marital trouble. Still, no one, not Shanann's closest friends, not her family, perhaps not even Shanann herself, could have guessed the chillingly brutal fate that was brewing inside of that household. I remember when I first heard their names on the news, August 2018. Missing person posters were circulating. Pregnant mother, 2 little girls vanished from their home. The TV flashed their photos. Shanann's confident smile, Bella with big brown eyes, and Celeste, her shy grin. I recall an ache in my chest as the as a father. I had been a father for 2 years now, and I just had my second son in 2018. This was a parent's worst nightmare. It's every parent's worst fear in one package, your family gone without a trace. At first, everyone hoped for the best. They always do. We thought maybe they ran off because the alternative, that something terrible had happened inside that home, was almost too awful to contemplate. Then Chris Watts appeared on the local news, standing on his porch, giving an interview that by now I've watched too many times in morbid hindsight. Perhaps you've seen it. If not, let me paint it for you. He's on the front porch of the family's neatly kept house, arms folded tightly across his chest, shifting his weight from one foot to another. The camera lights glare on his lone figure in the dark t-shirt, the man who, by all accounts, should be frantic with worry. He speaks calmly, almost eerily so. There is no tears in his eyes, no tears. Instead, he recounts to the reporter that the last time he saw his wife and kids, last night, I had every light in the house on, he says, voice steady. I was hoping that I would just get ran over by the kids rushing in the door, just barrel rushing me. But it didn't happen. He continues. That line. Last night I had every light in the house on. You know, there's a song. I don't remember who sings it, but that's the title. Every light in the house is on, in case you ever get tired of being gone or something like that. I wonder if Chris Watts listened to that song before he came up with that line. It's a weird thing to say, I think. But no, they didn't come home that night. In another clip, he looks straight into the lens and says, I have no idea, like, where they went. I don't even feel like this is real right now. It's like a nightmare I can't wake up from, quote unquote. Hearing those words now sends a prickling chill over my skin. At the time, I remember feeling something was off, the way he spoke, so composed, phrasing everything just so. It's like a nightmare I can't wake up from, he said. The irony now is devastating. He was the nightmare, walking and talking in daylight. But that morning, as I watched, I just felt an uneasy tightness in my stomach. Where was his urgency? Why was he so calm? I wasn't alone in this reaction. Turquoise, thanks for joining us. Turquoise says his eyes are black and his heart is empty. Neighbors who saw Chris on the news felt it too. One neighbor in particular later recalled how there was a total lack of emotion on Chris's face as he stood on that porch, how off-putting it was. Everyone imagined that if it were their family missing, they would be losing their minds. If it were his family, he should have been looking everywhere, one neighbor's son said, reflecting what we're all thinking. Chris just appeared uncomfortable, shifting on his feet, but not heartbroken or panic stricken. He wasn't out combing the streets. He wasn't shouting their names from the rooftops. He was giving sound bites to a camera, arms crossed defensively. To the untrained eye, maybe he seemed like a quietly anxious husband, clueless and hoping for his family's return. But so many of us watching had a nagging thought we didn't want to say out loud. Something about his effect was all wrong. It was like seeing a mask slip out for just 1 second. You catch a glimpse of something hollow underneath. At this point in the timeline, roughly 24 hours since anyone had last seen Shanann or the girls, police and friends were treating it as a missing person case. A close friend, Nicole Atkinson, had been the one to raise the alarm on that Monday, August 13th. Earlier that day, Shanann had missed a business meeting. She didn't answer her phone. This friend also knew Shanann was pregnant and had a doctor's appointment that morning. And when Shanann didn't show up for it, alarm bells went off. By early afternoon, the friend was worried enough to call the police for a welfare check. Officers arrived to find the Watts home seemingly empty. Shanann's car was still in the garage. Her purse was inside, along with her keys and her phone. Imagine that for a moment. A woman who is 15 weeks pregnant. No way she would leave without her phone, without her belongings, without her car. That's her lifeline in suburbia. And the two little girls, too. Car seats still strapped in place. Favorite toys left behind. They had disappeared into thin air. Chris had been at work that day or so, he said. He came home to meet the police, gave them permission to search the house. And what did he do? He offered a vague story that Shanann said she was going on a play date with the kids and never returned. Vague, indeed. Nothing concrete, nothing helpful. I picture that quiet house as the officers walked through, the kitchen where breakfast was never made that morning, the girls' bedroom with their bed still unmade from the night before, maybe a stuffed animal lying on the floor. There's something bone-chilling about an abandoned home that should be teeming with life. It's as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. In those critical hours, the police and the community still hoped this was a missing persons case. Maybe Shanann took the kids somewhere for a breather, maybe an emergency. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation put out an endangered missing persons alert for all three of them. And that's when Chris took to the cameras on August 14th, pleading for his family's safe return. I revisit that footage now with sorrow and quiet rage. Because now we know the truth. Now we know that when Chris stood on that porch saying, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Please bring them back. He already knew they would never come back. He knew because he had murdered them with his own hands barely 24 hours earlier. The audacity, the cold-blooded gall, the cold-blooded gall of it takes to stand there, to gaze straight into the TV camera and weave this gentle plea for the return of the very people you've killed. It's beyond haunting. It rattles the soul. As a father, as a fellow human being, I struggle to comprehend it. How could a man do that? How could he casually chat about hoping his kids would run through that door again when he himself snuffed out their young lives? How could he speak of the nightmares when he was the one that turned that house into a nightmare? These are the kinds of questions that flood my mind. Maybe yours too. What kind of person could put on that mask of normalcy so convincingly after committing the most unnatural of acts? And if someone can be that composed, that convincing, how are we ever supposed to trust our intuitions about anyone? This is where the failure of intuition stings the most. People saw something was off. But who among us would have jumped to the conclusion that a seemingly loving father, a husband with no known history of violence, had any chance of ever becoming a family annihilator? We'd like to believe we'd sense the evil, that we'd know if our spouse or child or neighbor harbored a murderous potential. It's comforting to think that there might be a tell, a flicker in the eyes, a certain tone of voice, a gut feeling in the dead of night. But the terrifying truth is, sometimes there is no warning strong enough, or our minds refuse to see it. Shanann's own intuition told her something was wrong in her marriage. She confided in friends that Chris had grown distant, that they had arguments, that they were struggling. But even in her worst fears, she was thinking maybe he was having an affair. Maybe he wanted a separation. Murder was not on the list of possibilities. How could it be? We can't fault her or anyone for that. It's the most basic assumption of life. The person who shares your bed, who makes you coffee in the morning, who kisses your children goodnight, could never hurt you in such a way. That assumption is what allows us to sleep under the same roof each night in peace. And when that assumption is turned inside out, when the call is indeed coming from the inside of the house, it upends everything. By the second day of the search, August 15th, the police must have felt those same uneasy vibes as many of us did. They brought Chris in for questioning, and he agreed to take a polygraph test. I can imagine him sitting in that interrogation room, wired up, trying to maintain that facade of a worried husband, but science caught up with him. He failed the polygraph test spectacularly. Faced with the undeniable fact that his lies were unraveling, Chris finally cracked, sort of. Cornered, he confessed, but not to everything. In a stunning act of cowardice, he tried to shift the blame to Shanann herself. Can you imagine? He told investigators that yes, he killed Shanann, but only because she had done the unthinkable. First, he claimed that Shanann had strangled their daughters in a fit of rage, and that he in turn killed her in retaliation. This was the grotesque story he invented on the fly, hoping perhaps for some twisted sympathy or at least a mitigation of his guilt. It was a lie, a cruel, desperate lie. Hello, R. Higgins. Thanks for joining us. R. Higgins says Chris Watts did not fool anyone. I immediately knew he was guilty when I saw that interview on his porch. I kind of agree too. I'm pretty sure I did as well. Maybe I didn't want to at first. So on August 16th, the worst fears were confirmed. Acting on the information gleaned from Chris and likely other investigative leads, the authorities found what they were looking for. Though it was every bit the horror they dreaded. Shanann's body was discovered in a shallow grave on the grounds of an oil storage site out in rural Wild County. Nearby, the bodies of Bella and Celeste were found submerged in crude oil tanks at Chris's work site. Now, I've always wondered who thought to look in the oil tanks. Even for seasoned law enforcement, I'm sure there are images from that day that will haunt them forever. The sight of a dark, silent oil tank containing the tiny remains of a 4-year-old girl in one and her 3-year-old sister in another. The fact that he dropped his daughters into those oil tanks, separating them even after death, is almost too much for the mind to process. They were little children who loved to play together, sisters who undoubtedly comforted each other in life, and they couldn't even leave them. He couldn't even put them in the same place when he disposed of them. The district attorney later noted with palpable outrage that Bella and Celeste were thrown away, put in different crude oil tanks so they could never be together, even in death. The thought of that absolutely breaks something inside of me. It's an image of calculated cruelty, as if the act of murder wasn't enough. He had to isolate them in their final indignity. It speaks to a level of emotional detachment that is truly chilling. Birdie Boo says, those poor police and fire agency that had to remove them, I can't even imagine. I'm thankful that I have not seen any kind of footage, photo or otherwise of that. I cannot see that. It would kill me, I think, to look at that. But now that you mention it, I wonder how many people had to retire after this case, the things they saw. Now, the story that emerged in the aftermath through confessions and court documents is this. In the early hours of August 13th, 2018, probably not long after 1:48 a.m. when Shanann arrived home from her business trip, Chris Watts murdered his entire family. He strangled Shanann in their bedroom, likely as their daughters slept down the hall. Shanann, who moments before had probably been sliding into bed, thinking of her morning routine, perhaps thinking of the baby boy growing in her womb. And then suddenly, she was fighting for her life. She didn't win that fight. While he was killing her, their little daughter Bella woke up and toddled into the room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "What's wrong with mommy?" she asks. Just saying that line, I can feel my throat tightening up. I just picture one of my own sons padding into the bedroom with a bad dream, asking some kind of question like that. What's wrong? Bella's innocent question must have hung in the air like a thunderclap, but the terror was just the beginning. Chris, in a cold, incomprehensible haze, took Shanann's lifeless body down to his truck wrapped in a blanket. He then put Bella and Celeste, his daughters, alive and no doubt confused and scared, into the back seat of that truck with their mother's body lying on the floor at their feet. In the pre-dawn darkness, he drove them to an oil field where he worked. I imagined the ride, perhaps the girls whimpering or asking questions, perhaps too stunned to cry. I've heard that he's claimed that he never said a thing to them on the way there, but it's a 45-minute drive. So I wonder if he said anything to them at all. Did he try to soothe them with lies, or was he silent, steeling himself for what he was planning next? These questions are the ones that torment anyone who's ever heard anything about this case. And the details only get worse. At that remote site, Chris smothered his 3-year-old Celeste, Cece, in the back seat of his truck. Bella, only 4 years old, watched her little sister die. We know Bella fought back. The autopsy would show she had bite marks on her tongue and signs of a struggle as her father took her life too. Bella's last word reportedly was, "Daddy, no." A final plea that went unanswered in the most brutal way imaginable. After it was over, he forced their small bodies through the tiny openings in those oil tanks. They are about 8 inches wide, 8 inches. He had to push with a significant amount of force to get them inside. He then buried Shanann and the unborn baby she carried, Nico, in a shallow grave nearby. He literally buried his love, his future, his own kin, and walked away as though discarding nothing more than trash. Trash. That word comes up painfully in this case. Art Higgins says that the bodies are contaminated and buried in special caskets. I didn't know that. Chris Watts is in a new relationship with a woman named Lizzie who shares contact visits regularly. I actually heard about that. Kind of makes me nauseous to think about. In the sentencing hearing, Shanann's father, Frank Ruzak, confronted Chris in court and said what the world was feeling. You took them out like trash. He called Chris a monster, a heartless and evil, and told him he didn't know what love is. Those words cut deep. Even the judge, hardened by years on the bench, said it was perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime he'd seen in all of his time on the bench. Listening to the family's statements, it's hard not to feel tears forming in your eyes and anger in the pit of your stomach. A quiet rage simmers in a lot of us. Shanann's parents and brother, their voices shaking with grief and fury, facing the man who sat there emotionless, staring downward, avoiding eye contact. How small he looked to them, stripped of his lies, unable to hide behind any mask or charm of normalcy. in that moment. He wasn't the smiling dad from the Facebook photos or the oddly calm man on the porch giving an interview. He was what he truly is, a murderer held to account, a family annihilator in a prison jumpsuit. I have to pause here for a sec, guys. Sometimes when I talk about this, it kind of hurts me, when I can imagine Shanann's family. It's got to be. I mean, if it's hard for me and I didn't know them, I can't imagine what Shanann's family would have felt. I mean, even if 1% of what I feel is what they felt, I would believe it. Like, this is a really horrible case, and I think that's why we always come back to it. It's just so unreal, but it's real, and real people are affected by these crimes. R. Higgins says he buried Shanann face down. I think there's a lot of symbolism put into things like that may not have been like something Chris Watts thought of when he did it. Doesn't make them seem any less cruel, but separating his daughters, burying his wife in a shallow grave. Birdie Boo says, I can't believe they allowed him to have their pictures. Yeah, I agree. She goes on, pictures of him, some criminals that have I think she's talking about some criminals keep trophies, like some killers keep trophies of their kills. And Chris Watts was allowed to keep pictures of his kills in his prison cell. The images, the facts, they always slam into me just with horror sometimes when I think of this stuff. It's one thing to think about crime in the abstract. It's another to picture those little girls, to think of their last moments and to grapple with the reality that their father was trying to hurt them, killing them. It just breaks my heart every time. As a parent, it is almost a betrayal of the natural order of the universe. Parents protect their children. That's just what we do. We lose sleep to rock them just while they have, my son would get sick and he would be coughing and sneezing, crying all night. And the only way that I could get him to sleep was to sit in a chair with him propped up on my chest, and I would lean back a little and he could finally breathe and sleep, but I couldn't, not really. You can't sleep in a chair with a baby on your chest without being afraid, that he might slip off. We'd throw ourselves in front of a moving car to save our children. I think about times that I've lost sight of my boys, even for just a couple minutes, and that bolt of terror that shoots through me until I get the relief when I see that they're just, over there. We have this instinct as a parent to comfort and shield our children. And it's powerful. It's fundamental. It's in our DNA. And then when I contrast with what Chris Watts did, I feel a gulf open up in my understanding of humanity. And it just makes me angry because it goes against everything I believe about love and parenthood and decency. I mean, how could he? That question echoes in my mind. How could you, Chris? I don't expect an answer. They say he wanted a new life. Um, he had an affair with his coworker, Nicole Kessinger. He told his mistress, Nicole, that he was almost divorced, that his marriage was practically over. He lied to her. He lied to everyone. By the time of the murders, he was in deep, sneaking off to spend nights with this other woman while Shanann was away, whispering sweet nothings, even talking about wedding venues and future plans with somebody else. Investigators later speculated that he saw his family as an obstacle to that shiny new life that he thought he'd always had wanted. Perhaps in his mind, he thought if he could just erase his current family, he could start fresh, unencumbered. It's sickening and almost banal motive. The age-old story of a cheater who kills to avoid the messy, inconvenient fallout of divorce or custody issues. This is not even rage or sudden provocation. It's a calculating selfishness. Divorce is too hard. So why not just annihilate the problem? That such a thought could even crystallize in someone's mind, let alone a father's mind, is proof that something is broken, something profoundly twisted beyond the comprehension of a normal feeling person. He wasn't always a monster, was he? That haunts me too. There are pictures and videos of Chris Watts doting on his daughter, kissing their cheeks, playing at the pool. Was that all a lie? Or did something inside of him break so badly that he became a different person? We often try to pinpoint a moment, a red flag. In hindsight, people dissect every video, every text message between Chris and Shanann looking for clues. There were arguments about his disinterest in the baby, about his coldness in the weeks leading up to the murders. Shanann texted a friend that he was withdrawn and she didn't know why, that they'd had the best talk ever shortly before she left for that business trip. And she hoped that they were reconnecting. From the outside, it's easy to scream at those messages. He's planning something. Get out. But Shanann couldn't know. None of them could. We're all Monday morning quarterbacks when tragedy strikes. The truth is, intuition can fail. People see what they want to see. And Shanann wanted to see the man she fell in love with, the man who had been caring for her, a loving husband and father, not the unthinkable alternative. That morning routine, that Monday, should have been like any other. Maybe Shanann would have woken up a little later, tired from her late flight home. Bella and Celeste might have padded into the kitchen in their pajamas, rubbing their eyes, asking for food. Perhaps Shanann would have smiled and started fixing them breakfast, maybe teasing Chris about handling the girls all weekend by himself. They'd have coffee. They'd talk about their upcoming week. Shanann might remind Chris of an ultrasound appointment coming up later that day, or Bella's first day of kindergarten. Those quiet, mundane moments of marriage, of parenthood, that normalcy should have filled that morning. But instead, in the dimness of that bedroom, normalcy was shattered forever. Violence erupted in the very places that are supposed to be the most safe. Their bedroom, of all places, the marital bed turning into a deathbed in the vicinity of the kitchen and living room where little Bella wandered in confused. The morning light just barely rising in the routine of dawn itself, which was hijacked and turned into something unspeakable. How many mornings have I taken for granted? Rushed through cereal bowls and shoe tying and backpack finding, 1,000 little irritations and giggles and spilled milk. That's the beautiful tapestry of life you don't realize is beautiful until you consider someone like Shanann, who was denied ever having another one of those mornings. One moment, normal life is humming along. The next, it's a crime scene. Fragility is the right word. Normalcy is so delicate, so dependent on everyone playing their part and no one secretly deciding to break the whole script apart. I think part of why this case grips so many of us is because it drives home that terrifying idea. You can be doing everything right, loving your spouse, raising your kids, living your life, and still, the rug can be pulled out from under you by the person you least expect. If your safe haven isn't safe, where can you ever truly be safe? That's the question that doesn't have an easy answer. We typically fear strangers. We double check the locks on our doors. There's this feeling we get sometimes, a nameless anxiety about the safety of people around us in general. I crawl into bed, checking on the kids. Then I think about somebody getting murdered. Did she have that fleeting moment of intuition when she walked through that door that night? A sense of something was off as Chris greeted her. We know from his later confession that he woke her up in the early morning to have a discussion about their marriage. He told her their relationship was over and that he wanted out. She understandably was upset. She reportedly told him something to the effect that you'll never see your kids again if he left her. Perhaps that was the spark that lit his murderous resolve. But did she sense how much danger she was in? I suspect not. How could she? Carol Ward says he wasn't bright enough to realize that he couldn't get away with it. And I agree. He thought he'd planned everything. He's probably thought about it 100 times now that he should have probably taken out the car seats, parked the car somewhere far away, took an Uber back to his house, something. Those bright warning signs that alerted Shanann's friend. I think they would have alerted anybody who was looking for Shanann. If her car's there and they could see her purse from the door window thing, she was right to get the police involved. Chris Watts is now a confessed killer, albeit one still clinging to a narrative that tried to smear his murdered wife as the real villain. But Forensic evidence and common sense quickly shredded that lie. There was no way Shanann had done what he claimed. The truth was clear. This was premeditated, deliberate familicide. Charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, including that of baby Nico, as well as unlawfully terminating a pregnancy and disposing of bodies, Chris faced the death penalty in Colorado. Shanann's family, who are deeply compassionate people, couldn't fathom the thought of more death, even his. In a move that still astounds me with its grace, they requested that the prosecutors not seek the death penalty. Could you ask that of a prosecutor who is trying to convict somebody who murdered someone in your family? They didn't want any more lives taken, even the life of the man who had destroyed theirs. So Chris chose to plead guilty to every charge to avoid the death penalty. He spared everyone the pain of a trial and perhaps spared himself the near certain outcome of death. Though I've heard that the following year they abolished the death penalty in Colorado, and that anyone that was on death row was somehow taken off of death row. I imagine the air in the courtroom when he spoke those words. Guilty. The judge asks, for each charge, how do you plead? Guilty. The quiet sobs of Shanann's family in the front row. Chris's own parents, stunned and grief-stricken in their own way, sitting behind the defense table. There is nothing like a sentencing hearing in a case like this. It's raw. It's basically humanity laid bare. The pain and anger and the confusion all spilling out in words directed at the defendant. 2 weeks later, on November 19th, 2018, those impact statements filled the room. One by one, Shanann's family stood before Chris. Shanann's mother, Sandra, told him she didn't want him to be executed, that his life was now between him and God. Imagine that mercy. I don't know if I could be that strong. Shanann's brother and father did not mince words in calling him out. You monster. Her father thundered. You don't know what love is. Prison is too good for you. Her brother said that he wasn't even worth the time it took to write a statement. He prayed Chris would never have a moment's peace. Chris himself did not speak. He had the opportunity to make a statement, to apologize, to explain, if there could ever be an explanation. But Chris Watts declined. He kept his head down, his eyes on the table throughout the hearing. In some photos I saw from that day, he looks utterly diminished, as he should. The judge delivering the sentence said it was one of the worst crimes he's ever seen. He pronounced the punishment 5 life sentences, 3 to be served consecutively, meaning back to back, effectively assuring Chris will never breathe free air again. In addition, the judge tacked on decades more for other charges. The unlawful termination of a pregnancy earned him 48 extra years. And each count of tampering with the bodies added another 12 years apiece. It was the maximum possible sentence allowed by law, and rightly so. As the judge noted, nothing less would be appropriate for the crime. when the gavel finally fell, and I think many people, including myself, let out a the breath we'd been holding. There was justice as much as that word can apply here, but what there wasn't, what there never will be, is a return to normalcy for those who are left behind. Shanann's family will live with this for the rest of their life, along long after the news cameras are gone. And at this point, it doesn't seem like the news cameras are going anywhere. Just the other day, I talked to somebody who had just heard of Chris Watts for the first time. They want to know more. They want to understand the same way we all have been following this case and trying to understand. I feel sorry for Shanann's family. Can you imagine people online actually spun vile theories that somehow their daughter was to blame? It it's just cruel to talk about somebody who can't defend themselves. I don't know Shanann Watts. I don't know if she was, a great person, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever she was, whoever she was, the personality that she had at the time, all of that doesn't matter anymore because she was killed. Her life was stolen from her. She doesn't have the opportunity to become a better person. If these flaws of hers were ever pointed out to her, maybe she could have changed. Or maybe she would just have defended herself. In the Watts's neighborhood, there was a eerie pall that hung over that once happy home. Neighbors described how often after the murderers, the house, well, the yard where Bella and Celeste used to play went unattended. The weeds started to get growing. Um, but people were coming by, leaving flowers, stuffed animals, heartfelt tokens left on their front porch. Some would stand in front of the house and cry. Once someone even left 2 Happy Meal boxes there, perhaps a gesture for the girls who would never get to enjoy a McDonald's treat again. The house became a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of an emotional echo. A home that was supposed to be filled with giggles and the aroma of home cooked meals now stood as a silent monument to lost normalcy. I'll tell you something honest. After I learned the full scope of this case, you just can't look at your children the same way. You hug them a little tighter. You go out of your way to, watch those movies that don't make sense to you because your kids love them. You get interested in what they're interested in. This tragedy was premeditated. Some tragedies are just bad luck, accidents, car accidents, falls, and stuff like that. Every single type of tragedy is hard to deal with. But I think this type of tragedy is even harder because somebody chose to do it. Well, guys, I think I'm going to have to get going, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. I could keep talking about this forever, but I'll probably start repeating myself. This is a horrible story. These people had real lives, real dreams. Something that always gets me is imagine being one of those people who sent Shanann a message waiting for an answer, not knowing that she was gone. It's gotta be one of the most awful things that I can imagine. You know, you text somebody, you're waiting for an answer, they don't respond, you get a little irritated. When you think things like, well, when they finally do message me, I'm going to tell them never to wait that long again before they reply or something, but then you find out what really happened and the real reason, and you feel guilty. But guys, thank you all for hanging out. I know it's not really the kind of live I usually do, but I I don't know. I'm still learning how to do the live streams, I guess I could say. I don't know how to I can make it a long form video pretty easy. I can do shorts pretty easy. But just doing a live stream, it's hard to figure out. I don't know. It's getting easier. I'll figure it out. I am planning to have a live on Sunday. I think it's also going to be on Chris Watts. And I think it's going to be about I kind of want to watch all of the sentencing stuff, like completely all the way through, maybe even as the first, his arraignment and things like that. Any court appearances, I'm going to look for all of that stuff. If any of you have got those kinds of clips and want to share them with me, my email is on my main page. You can just let me know, and I don't think I have any of that stuff yet, so I'm going to be looking for it in the next couple of days. But before you guys all go, make sure you hit that like button a whole bunch of times. I know the Nightbot's been asking you guys to do that all night. I hope you have been. I always forget to mention that kind of stuff, but it is really appreciated. And if you don't know about it yet, you can go to my community page. I have trivia there. I post things fairly regularly. Usually I post something every day. But yeah, it's been fun, guys. Have a good night. As always, stay kind, be vigilant, and always question the truth. I'll catch you in the next video.